In much more positive news, I did something social today that I would, I guess, recommend to other people. So, a little while ago, I talked on this podcast about a card game called Flesh and Blood, or Fab to the hip kids. So, the local game store that's nearby me, within walking distance, thank God, was having a Black Friday sale. And they were like, hey, 25% off all card games. And I figured, hey, you know, I checked because on their Discord they have a channel specifically for Flesh and Blood, or Fab to the hip kids, and it was pretty active. It was fairly active. So that was kind of encouraging to me, as well, maybe I could go in and pick up some kind of did they sell pre-constructed decks or something like that, and maybe check out the local scene, you know, be social for once in my life, leave the house to go meet people. Jesus, what's happened to me? Taigen from 4 years ago would have scoffed. So I hopped into their Discord and I asked for some recommendations. It turns out that the creators of Fab, what are they called? What's the company again? Legend Story Studios. They put out what are called armory decks that are essentially pre-cons. They're pre-constructed decks that you can just pick up. It's a full deck that you can just start playing with right then and there. It's got everything you need for a nominal fee. And I figured, okay, well, it's Black Friday. I'll go in and pick something up at a little bit of a discount. So I think for about $30-ish, I picked up the Azalea Armory deck. And then on the next week, I went to my very first local. Isn't that crazy? To tell the truth, I've been wanting to actually do something like, you know, kind of social related to a hobby for a while. It's just I happen to live in this like little dead zone where there's nothing within walking distance, and I don't have a car. There's nothing within walking distance that that I'm interested in. It's an actual like hobby of mine. So the experience, it was probably one of the best social experiences I've had in a while. Everyone was incredibly nice. There's probably around, I want to say like 15 to 20-ish people at the store. The main fellow who runs it, guy by the name of Jeff, just gave me like a bunch of free shit. All I did was I showed up with nothing but the cards. I got no peripherals, no extras, no nothing. I just put a rubber band around my deck. I put it into the little cardboard box that it came in, which was half torn up from me opening it in the first place. And then I walked over to the game store and I left with, well, okay, so first of all, as I came in and I talked a little bit, I was chatting up him and a few other people. You know, there wasn't like a clean opportunity to sit down and really talk to anyone too much. It was just, you know, it was lurker time. So eventually he came back over and he dropped a play mat down on the table. And I said, "Oh, is that for me?" And he goes, "Yeah." And it's the mat has like a little, it's like an official play mat. It's got a Christmassy holiday themed sort of wreath image on it, painting on it. And he goes, "Yep. So now you can holiday themed, so you can remember when you started playing." And I was like, "Oh, is this for me to keep?" And he goes, "Yeah." Yeah. He's like, "Yeah." Which so he just gave me that. So of course I thanked him. Before I started playing my first game, he came over and gave me some card sleeves for my main hero and their equipment cards. Later on during my second game, just came over and gave me a box. It's one of these. It's like a 2-in-1 product. It's a deck box, a little cardboard deck box, for storing your cards, and inside of it is 100 card sleeves to protect the valuables. And I got home and I looked underneath at like the price tag as I was opening it up to sleeve my cards. And it was like a $16 product that you just gave me for free. And I was like, oh, what the hell? It's just, everyone was so nice. Like everyone I played against, I played three games. Games last about an hour on average. So I was there for 3 hours about. Super nice, really friendly, very patient with me, which was nice. I'm practically brand new. I kind of knew the basic rules. There was a lot of stuff I wasn't super clear on. And obviously it was the first time I had actually played with this particular deck. So they were very kind about letting me take things back if I misplayed, because I would make tiny little mistakes of, oh wait, hang on, I neglected to read part of the card text. Fuck, that doesn't work that way. And then you want to take that back? Yeah. And I lost every game. It wasn't like I was getting some kind of unfair advantage that mattered. Literally like people giving me advice on like the people I was playing and giving me active like advice on how to play my hero and this deck. The super kind, super friendly, telling me all about the game. And when I say patience, the first person I have never felt, it's been a long time since I have felt like as much of a freak as I did when I asked my first opponent if a particular effect would fail to go off because it missed the timing. And she looked at me and was like, what? What does that mean? And I couldn't get into the specifics because it's a little too much. It's a Yu-Gi-Oh thing. like Yu-Gi-Oh, dude, playing other games and learning their rules puts it into perspective actually how fucking nuts Yu-Gi-Oh is as a game. Okay, just for fun, I'll explain this for you guys. So, in Yu-Gi-Oh, let's say that you have a card that's let's say that you have a card that says when the opponent destroys a monster, you can draw a card. Okay, you can activate this and draw a card. And then I play a card that says destroy a monster and gain 1,000 life points. Right? I play my card, I activate it, I destroy a monster, gain 1,000 life points. Your card cannot go off. You are not allowed to activate it based off of me destroying the monster. You cannot do your thing where you draw a card. Because your card uses a when clause. When your opponent destroys a monster, do this. And my effect performs my card performs 2 actions within one effect. So in resolving the effect, the last action to happen is not the destruction of the monster, it's me gaining life points. Which means that your card is time sensitive, and because the last thing to happen is not the monster destruction, you can't activate it. However, if your card reads, if your opponent destroys a monster, draw a card, then you can activate it after my effect resolves, because if is not time sensitive, and that is called when the effect essentially the window for the effect to go off passes because something else happens in between. That's called missing the timing. And there are literally cards that are balanced. Like, this is an element of the game that is like something that cards are balanced around. There is literally there's a monster called Ryko, Lightsworn Hunter, who was a pretty strong card for quite a while, and one of the little niche little utilities that he had was that when he was flipped face up, he would you could set off 2 different effects. And one thing that was useful for was that it could be a counter to certain cards that were vulnerable to missing timing. Ryko was actually nerfed. It was a rare errata of a card where they changed the official text of a card. And the nerf was that both of his effects happened simultaneously. So they essentially happen in one action, meaning that if you have an effect that triggers based off of either of them, they are both technically the last thing to happen. And that was considered a nerf because he could not force cards to miss timing anymore. That's how Yu-Gi-Oh works. So I had I forget what it was. It was like I had a card that was like, oh, do this and then draw, put a card from your deck to your armory, then draw a card or something like that. And then I have another thing that's like when you put a card from your deck to your arsenal, that's what it's called, not the armory. When you put a card from your deck to your arsenal, put a special kind of counter on it. And I did that, and my Yu-Gi-Oh brain was like, oh no, it misses timing. And I had to ask her if that's how that worked. And she's like, no. No, there's nothing like that in Flesh and Blood. And it was like, but then what are the rules? If I can't follow absolute grammatical certainty, how do I understand what's happening? Like, I played against like 2 different people who had effects, or they had cards that are like auras or something like that, and they would just kind of like put them around like in the middle of the board, and I was like, does that have a spot that is that doing something? Why is that just hanging out there? And they're like, oh, it's just like an aura, it just kind of hangs out wherever I want it. Most people just put it around the center, like off to the side. And I was like, does it not have like a zone that it goes to? And they're like, no, you just kind of hangs out. And I was like, oh, okay. And I had to process that. It doesn't have a zone that it goes to. Because in Yu-Gi-Oh, everything has to go into a zone. That's how it works. If you play a spell, even if it just is instantly discarded to your graveyard after it's done resolving, you have to have a spell zone, a spell or trap zone open to play it in. That's how it works. I always say that the way I describe it is that Yu-Gi-Oh is designed by programmers, and it works off of like programmer logic, like code logic. You read the card, and the card, the text is more or less absolute. There's very little wiggle room for interpretation. Yeah. But the game is a lot of fun. If nobody remembers Flesh and Blood, it is a sort of hero-based card game that is kind of meant to emulate like a one-on-one fight between 2 different characters. I've heard it's the way I was introduced to it was a video that compared it to fighting games. And I think it's actually a pretty, it's a little bit interpretive, but it's not a bad comparison about the actual kinds of decision making that you have to process. It has this pretty interesting system where you a lot of your cards represent they're either like attacks, non-attacks. There's a couple like little utility types or things that can only be played after an attack has been declared. For the most part, it's a lot of attacks and what they call instants, which I guess could be sort of mostly likened to like spells in other games, sorceries, instant is a class of card in Magic. It is. Quick plays in Yu-Gi-Oh, things like that. every card. What's cool about the game mechanically is that pretty much every card has, if it's an attack, a damage value, a cost to play, a blocking value, because you can use it to block damage from your opponent's incoming attack, and a pitch value. You can actually use any card can be pitched to essentially create resources. The resources are drawn from the cards in your hand, which is neat. So they'll either pitch for 1, 2, or 3 energy, based off of like a little colored bar at the top and a little icon they've got. And part of the strategy is that every card has a lot of things going on, because it has so it's got the actual effect. It's what it can be used for, like offensively if it's an attack. There's the possibility that you could maybe want to keep it to block your opponent's attack. And then there's the fact that it can be used as a resource to play your other cards. And so every time you play one card, unless it's like a free card, which some like classes and things are kind of based around, you're going to have to also give something up. You draw, and it leads to this kind of interesting kind of back and forth flow, because you draw cards at the end of your turn, and you always draw up to your character's listed hand size. I think for basically everyone it's 4. So at the end of your turn, you will always draw up to a full hand of 4 cards. So if your opponent swings with a big attack and you spend your entire hand to block it, you'll just start your turn with no cards in hand. So part of the strategy is that you actually just have to take certain hits, and you have to know when and where to take certain damage. I can already tell there is a lot of matchup knowledge. It definitely feels like a bit of a knowledge checky game in certain ways, which is, a fighting game thing. The second game I played was against a guy who was playing a warrior, and he would be like, all right, I'm going to swing with my weapon. Every character has a weapon that they can use as just a basic kind of attack. He's like, I'm going to swing with my weapon. It does. I'm like, how much damage is it doing? He goes 2. For now. And I decide I'm not going to put up any blocks. And then he goes, okay. And then he plays like 3 of what are called attack reactions. Attack reactions can be played by the attacker. Essentially, the way that it goes is you declare what you're attacking with. The opponent declares, the defending player declares how much they're going to block with, if any at all. Then the attacker gets to then play attack reactions, which are usually, things that modify the attack that you're doing. And then the defender gets to play any defense reactions, and then you resolve the chain essentially. So it's like, okay, well now it does 8 damage, and it gains a property called Go Again, because you can only play by default, one action per turn. So that is an attack action that you've played. And now he can play a second thing following up after it. So I actually just took almost 15 damage, which is about a quarter of my life. So that's a lesson that you learn of, okay, certain things, maybe I should block them. There are cards that have, they have effects of, if this does any damage, it gains Go Again, and you can chain okay, I have to stop them. I have to stop them from getting the initial hit so that they can't follow up on it. And these are decisions that you have to make that I think are pretty interesting. The character that I've been playing is Azalea, who is a ranger. Rangers have seemingly most, if not all, of their unique attack actions are arrows. And the idea is that you don't play the arrows directly from your hand. There is a 5th spot, I kind of mentioned it. It's called the arsenal. The arsenal essentially acts as a fifth hand space. At the end of your turn, if you have any cards remaining in your hand, you can place one of them into your arsenal, face down, assuming that it's empty. And it basically gives you, an extra hand slot to work with on your next turn. So Rangers have this kind of fun, flavorful mechanic where arrows can only be played from arsenal. So the idea is that they have to load the arrow into the arsenal and then fire it from there. And the weapons that they have, which are, bows, usually have, I think just about all of them have effects that allow you to just place something into your arsenal for a cost. So that's the loading and firing mechanic. Azalea essentially works by, she doesn't block a lot, which I think might be one of the reasons that she's considered like a sort of beginner character, because the decision-making of blocking is often made for you in don't block, because she is super heavily combo focused in the sense that she kind of revolves around get an arrow into arsenal, have like 3 what the community calls pump cards, which basically just, there's a bunch of cards that are like the next card that the next attack you make from your arsenal has +3 damage, or add like even other keywords onto it, like it can only be blocked by a maximum of 1 card, something like that. Basically just get an arrow into arsenal, buff it up, boost it up with a bunch of cards from your hand that are usually free, and then deal like a quarter of your opponent's life in like 1 turn. And I'd say probably like the idea, now that I've played it a little more on the online simulator Talishar, which I think you should check out if you're interested in the game. Ideally you end the game in like 5, 6, 7 turns, assuming that your hands are good and you're able to get some big arrows going. And it's pretty fun. Like, it's a fun play style. I've been having a good time, and it was a great social experience. I would recommend, and the community, at least my local community, I don't know about you guys, but my local community is super good about, like, I think they just told me, like, hey, if you want any cards that are common or rare in their rarity, there's like 4 different rarities of cards. If you want anything that are like the bottom 2 commons or rares, literally just ask. Because there's people who have so much bulk that they're just trying to get off their hands that is like worth fractions of cents individually. They'll just hand it out of literally just goodwill to help people. Very nice community when it comes to just giving stuff away for free to help people out. Very welcoming and friendly to me as a new player. And I don't know, it was great. Maybe your local Flesh and Blood scene is a bunch of assholes, but for me, I would definitely recommend, if you've got like a card store or a game store or anything that is within realistic distance of you or whatever, I would say go check the game out. I think it's really fun. It fulfills a nice little niche, you know. The trading card game scene, the industry, I guess you'd call it, the genre, I feel like it has a bit of a problem where new games come out and a lot of them are just like doing magic, but not magic. You know what I mean? Like, I'll hear about a card game and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Well, does this appeal to anyone beyond people who are already really into card games? Probably not. And maybe they weren't trying to. Maybe they were just trying to appeal to a more enthusiast niche. But not anything that is going to serve a particular audience. Like, I would say the most popular card games, they all have something. They all have very unique identities. Magic is obviously Magic. It's the founder. It's the grandfather of the whole genre. Yu-Gi-Oh is infamous for this like absurd power creep combo game, and just being like the most insane. It's like the Marvel versus Capcom of TCGs. Pokemon has the whole deal with like one-on-one Pokemon fighting and stuff like that. And evolving your Pokemon and having like a roster of them. Flesh and Blood, I would say, has what's cool about it, and what feels like it has a lot of room to grow in audience, is that it does provide something very different. It has a very different flow. It has a very different dynamic that the heroes and classes and stuff create. The whole idea of a one-on-one fight between two characters represented by the attack cards that they're playing and defending with, it's actually very cool. And I am interested. It has like a pretty decent following. It's been going for a couple years. I want to say back in like 2020 it started. And it's a very cool game. I would recommend it. I could see it, you know, it's kind of hard to get, once there's like 3 big players in a scene, it's really hard for there to be more than 3. It's really hard. And generally it goes, there's like the 2 biggest ones, and then the third one that's like maybe a little smaller, and is like kind of unique. Fab seems like a very promising, like, little fourth place runner-up. A lot of people are also really into the One Piece card game. I don't know anything about that. I'm not into One Piece myself. I know that there's that Disney Lorcana game that Kat was interested in, I think just because she likes Disney stuff. Which I think my local shop also has a scene for, maybe. They were doing some promotions for it that I remember seeing. Maybe I could get her into coming and playing competitive Lorcana. I'm playing Mickey Mouse in attack position. That's not even that ridiculous, because fucking Kingdom Hearts exist. The problem with Disney, the problem with like any kind of Disney parody, is that you are never going to get as funny and tonally bizarre as the scene from Kingdom Hearts where Mickey Mouse looks at Goofy's dead body and says, they'll pay for this. Nothing can ever, like, get out. No, you cannot release a parody that is any more amazing than Kingdom Hearts is. Oy vey. In any event, yeah, I check it out. Going and doing hobbies with other people is fun. So I'd love to go back.